tragic and heartbreaking to see these two squabbling in this way. The Prime Minister was so disappointed in the NDP leader's flip-flop on carbon tax for heat, but the good news for the Prime Minister is the NDP leader has flip-flopped on his flip-flop and now supports the Prime Minister's plan to quadruple the tax.
Gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Question Period Canada. Who knows what's going on? It's so flip-flopping all over the place. Who's going to be our next leader? Is it going to be POILIEVRE? Kind of fingers crossed. Trudeau, people don't like him very much. And JAGMEET, people don't seem to trust the NDP much anymore. So let's take a look at what all three are saying. Two Canadians on April Fool's Day. Happy Easter Monday.
How you doing? Thanks, guys. Merci d'être là. Merci tout le monde d'être ici aujourd'hui. Thank you very much for being here today, fellow Canadians. It is an honor to address the great people of Vancouver Island. Thank you for making your way out today. An honor to have this spontaneous gathering with us even before our rally starts. I wish it were on better occasion, but look behind you there. That right there is Justin Trudeau and the NDP's cruel April Fool's Day joke on Canadians. It is a joke without laughter. It is a joke that brings tears to the eyes of most Canadians, because after 8 years of Trudeau and his coalition with the NDP, everything costs more. 2 million Canadians line up at food banks because they can't afford food. 1/3 of food-related charities are turning Canadians away because they've run out of food. In Montreal, a couple of weeks back, there was a small riot after the food ran out and the police had to be called because there were too many hungry people on the streets clamoring for something to eat. In St. John's, Newfoundland, there are 28 dead bodies left in refrigerators outside of a hospital because families could not afford a funeral or cremation. Can you imagine that? Leaving your aunt, your father, your sister, your brother in a freezer next to a dumpster at a hospital because you cannot afford to give them a dignified goodbye. These are the kinds of stories that we see after 8 years of Trudeau. Homeless encampments are now common in almost every community in the country. We all remember the downtown east side of Vancouver. Well, Justin Trudeau and the NDP have taken that model nationwide. They've doubled housing costs with rent, mortgage payments, and down payments now costing twice what they did 8 years ago when Trudeau promised to lower them. Then we have the crime because of catch and release, decriminalization of drugs, and wasted money pursuing a ban on hunters and sport shooters. We have crime and chaos everywhere in our streets. Violent crime up 40%. Shootings up over 100%. 40,000 people have died of drug overdoses as the Prime Minister floods our streets with tax-funded opioids. And his solution to all this misery is today to hike the carbon tax by 23%. This is not just a tax at the pump. It's a tax on your heat, a tax on your food, because if you tax the farmer who grows the food and the trucker who ships the food, you tax all who buy the food. It is a tax that will cost the majority of families in every single province more than they get back. In Alberta, the average family will pay $900 more this year than they get back in rebates. In Saskatchewan, $525 more than they get back in rebates. In Manitoba, $502 more. In Ontario, $627 more. In Nova Scotia, $537 more. In Prince Edward Island, $550 more. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, $377 more in tax costs than you get back in rebates. And in BC, it's worst of all. Here, the NDP government is expected to collect $9 billion more in carbon taxes in carbon taxes and give back $3.5 billion in credits. So you can tell there's a big difference between 9 and 3.5. That's $5.5 billion in net taxes out of the pockets of British Columbians. It is a combined tax imposed by Trudeau in Ottawa, but happily administered by the NDP government of David Eby here in British Columbia. My friends, the good news is life was not like this before Trudeau, and it won't be like this after he's gone. There will be a carbon tax election with a very clear choice between Trudeau, a costly coalition of Trudeau and the NDP, who tax your food, punish your work, take your money, double your housing costs, and unleash crime and chaos in your community, or common sense conservatives, who axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Common sense conservatives will axe the tax to bring down costs on our farmers, on our small businesses, on building materials. We will cap government spending and cut waste to balance the budget so we can bring down inflation and interest rates, and your dollar will carry its purchasing power forward into the future. Speaking of powerful paychecks, we'll remove government gatekeepers to develop our resources again. Our fisheries, our forestry, our farmers, our factories will come roaring back to life, producing more of the goods that money buys rather than just producing money. We're going to bring home the production to Canada. We're going to incentivize our municipalities to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. We'll require they permit 15% more housing completions per year as a condition of getting federal funds so that they get out of the way and let builders build. We'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings, thousands of acres of federal land to build. We'll back up the trades so we have more builders to do the work. We need more boots and not more suits. And we will ensure these homes are in safe neighborhoods, with jail and not bail for repeat violent offenders, with treatment, not more decriminalized and subsidized drugs, so that we can rehabilitate our loved ones and bring them home drug-free. We will stop the attack on law-abiding, lawful hunters and sport shooters. We know that our hunters are not the problem. It is the criminals who bring the guns over the border illegally. We'll put the money into reinforcing our ports and our borders so that we keep the illegal drugs and guns out of our country, and we bring home safety to all Canadians. This is the hopeful, bright, and optimistic future that awaits with a common-sense conservative government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll now have time for a few questions from the floor.
Thank you.
Hi there, Jordan Davidson, and IMO News Now. If your party removes the carbon tax, what would that mean for provinces like BC who have implemented their own?
It will give the British Columbia government the authority to do the same. Right now, Justin Trudeau has basically threatened BC. He said either BC will bring in its own carbon tax, or if it doesn't, the Trudeau government will force one from Ottawa. By removing that threat, British Columbians can elect a common sense provincial government that can axe the tax here in BC. The alternative is what Trudeau and the NDP are both proposing now, which is that they will quadruple the tax. They want to raise it. This is just the beginning. They want to quadruple the tax up to 61 cents a litre. So you've got another 43 cents of carbon tax hikes coming if Trudeau is re-elected in his coalition with the NDP. What I'm saying is a common sense conservative government will axe the federal tax that will free British Columbians to elect a provincial government that will do the same.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Claire Palmer, CBC News. You spoke quite a bit about food insecurity, and I was wondering if you would support a national food school program or school food program, and why or why not?
Well, after 8 years of Trudeau, 1 in 4 school children is going without enough food. That's a major failure for Justin Trudeau. This is after 8 years of promising that he'd help the middle class. Well, now, by his own admission, 1 in 4 kids don't get enough food. I find it ironic that he's promising a federal food bureaucracy in Ottawa the same day as he raises taxes on food. His carbon tax on the farmer who grows the food and the trucker who ships the food is a tax on the single mom who can't afford to buy the food. I'm reminded that he brought in an affordable housing program. And what did that do? It doubled the cost of housing. So my common sense plan is to axe the carbon tax to lower the cost of food for everyone so that we can reverse the malnutrition that Justin Trudeau's 8 years have caused. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Drea Humphrey with Rebel News. You've made it very clear if you form government, you will axe the carbon tax. But will you also withdraw us from the underlying United Nations Paris Accord agreement, which allows us to be unfairly taxed on our emissions while giving China a pass?
Well, we will not be unfairly taxed on our emissions, and I will not give China or any other country a pass. We will reduce emissions and costs, but our approach is completely different than Trudeau's. His approach is taxes, mine is technology. His approach is to raise the cost of traditional energy that we still need. My approach is to lower the cost of alternatives. His approach is to put up stop signs in front of our workers. My approach is to green light green projects. We need a massive abundance of clean, green, emissions-free energy by giving fast permits and responsible permits for hydro dams, nuclear power, carbon capture and storage, offshore tidal wave power. These are the kinds of power sources that I will bring home by granting quick but responsible approval so that they can go ahead. That will mean abundant, affordable, clean energy that brings down emissions and the cost of living. Trudeau wants to drive production to dirty dictatorships. I want to bring it home, powerful paychecks for our people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Kendall Hansen from Czech News. Nice to see you in Nanaimo again. Just wondering, in terms of the Conservative plan, how would you reduce greenhouse gases? I know you touched on that a little bit, but we haven't really heard a fleshed out plan from the Conservatives on how you're going to reduce greenhouse gases.
Again, our approach is to lower the cost of alternatives rather than raising the cost of traditional energy we still need. That means quickly approving hydroelectric dams in, for example, Quebec, which needs to double its output of hydroelectricity over the next several decades in order to meet the demand for emissions-free energy. We need to green light tidal wave power off the East Coast, the kind that Trudeau blocked with years of bureaucracy. We need to speed up small modular nuclear reactors that will supply clean, green, emissions-free electricity onto the grid. We need to support carbon capture and storage that will allow industry to put emissions back underground where it came from. In other words, where Trudeau proposes taxes, I propose technology. Where he proposes to raise the cost of traditional energy we still need, I propose to lower the cost of alternatives. Where he wants to drive our jobs to dirty dictatorships, I want to bring home powerful paychecks for our people. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be the final question.
Jonathan Bartlett from Global News. Reporters at an anti-carbon tax rally in Hope, BC this morning were harassed and yelled at for being there. How concerning is that for you?
I didn't witness that, so I can't comment on something I haven't seen. But all I can say is that we need to unify our country around an optimistic vision to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Thank you very much.
Not holding on any longer, I'm going to introduce my friend JAGMEET to speak about how the NDP is fighting for families.
Thanks so much, Claire.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. I am really honored to be here, and I'll be passing the mic over to Sarah at the end. And to Sarah, thanks so much for being here as well. As you heard from Claire, is why we want Claire to be our next member of parliament for Davenport, or for Danforth. She is so passionate, cares so much about people, and you can hear in the way she's advocating, she really wants to make sure families get a break. And that's what we're here to fight about. We want to make sure that families who are really hurting with the cost of groceries have some relief. We know how hard it is for families that go into the grocery store and are saying, how are we possibly supposed to afford food for our families, pay the bills, pay our rent or mortgage? It is so difficult. And so what we've been saying is we've got to find ways to give people some relief, give people a break. And the Liberals promised a national food program in 2019. And it has been years and years and nothing. They've continued to break their promise. We're not surprised by that. They have done that in the past. They promised to bring in pharmacare for 30 years and broke those promises for 30 years until we finally forced them to do so. So we want to make it very clear. We are demanding the federal government bring in the supports necessary for a national food program in schools. This is going to help out so many families. I think about the guilt that the parents feel right now when they are just barely able to keep their head above water, don't have enough to make sure their kids have a very nutritious, good meal, and are just scraping together some snacks for them to go to school and have something to eat. And I know what that's like when you're wondering, am I doing enough for my kids? Am I doing enough as a parent? I remember when I had to take care of my kid brother when I was 20 and he was 15 and making sure I put food on the table for him. It was a struggle. Parents are feeling that right now. So the least we can do is take a little bit off their plates to have parents know that their kids can go to school and they will be guaranteed a nutritional meal. That is something that will be very meaningful for those kids. Like Claire mentioned, it'll ensure that they can focus on going to school and doing what they need to do in school. For the parents, it takes off that pressure, that guilt and that worry that their kids aren't getting the best meal possible packed for them to go to school. And it's going to save families money. It's going to make sure that those families are actually going to have a bit of a break. In contrast to that, while we know that families right now, we're seeing record food bank usage, highest since 1989, we're seeing millions of kids now in poverty because of the cost of living being so high. And what is the response of the Liberals? Again, they've ignored this problem. They've promised and then broken the promise of bringing in a national food program. And then we see the Conservatives who claim to care about people struggling with the cost of food, but have voted against a national school food program, not once, but twice very recently. So on one hand, they talk about the struggles that people are going through, then they vote against a concrete solution that would actually help out parents and kids. It shows you Pierre Poilievre is not in it for you. Pierre Poilievre personally voted against bringing in a national school program. So he is not in it for you. That's why I want to make it, Ken, our demand very clear. We've got a budget coming up. We've been making this demand now for months. We want to see in this upcoming budget funding to support a national food program for kids in school. This is our demand, and we want to be very clear. We expect this to happen. We're going to keep the pressure going. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to do that again in French and then ask a little French in there too. Well, again, a huge thank you to our school board trustee here locally, Sarah, and a big thank you to Claire. Claire Haxall is just an incredible candidate for us here in Danforth, and we're really looking forward to you becoming the next member of parliament. With that, I'm ready for any questions that you might have on site. Donc, je suis prêt pour vos questions.
Okay, we're going to start with questions on site. We'll do one question, one follow-up. We're starting with City TV.
Today is April 1st. The new carbon tax comes into play. What's the NDP's opinion on that?
Well, we know that right now families are really feeling the squeeze of the cost of living crisis, and that's something that's very much on our mind. But let's be very clear. We know that Pierre Poilievre would have you believe that this is the major concern when it comes to the cost of living. But we know when Canadians were asked, what is a major driver of the cost of food going up? And they were asked that question because it's one of the things that really hits hard. And it's what we're talking about today. They said it's corporate greed. And they're right. We have done extensive research into this. We've had the Parliamentary Budget Office look into this. And it is clear that large corporate grocery store CEOs have used inflation as cover to jack up the price of your food. So while people are hurting right now, having a hard time trying to buy the groceries that they need, Galen Weston is making more money than he's ever made in the history of his company. They're making record profits as CEOs, and they're bringing in record bonuses as CEOs and making record profits for the company. That's the problem. You're never going to hear Pierre Poilievre talk about that. He's never going to talk about corporate greed or Galen Weston ripping you off because his chief strategist, one of the major strategists for his party, is a major lobbyist for the largest corporate grocery food chain in this country. It is no wonder that he's not going to take this on. The Liberals have ignored this problem, but we've taken it on. So we know that people are worried about the cost of living. And for those families, we say to you, we see you, we hear you. That's why we're fighting for a national food program in schools to give you some relief. That's why we fought for dental care, to make sure that families were able to save some money, get their kids the care they need, seniors are able to get the care they need, and also save them money. That's why we fought for pharmacare. That's going to save thousands of dollars for families that are with people living with diabetes and people with who need those devices and medication. We're saving money for families, and with free birth control, that's going to save lots of money again for families, for women that need access, for people that need access. That's going to save them money. We've been fighting to save money for people, while the Conservatives want to let the corporate CEOs that are ripping you off have a free ride. We're fighting back. And today we're talking about another real concrete relief that's going to save a lot of money for families and make sure their kids get the nutrition they need.
Follow up. Why is it important for children coverage?
Well, I mean, I think it would be obvious if you've had a kid and they're hungry, there's nothing else that they can focus on. If you're hungry, I put aside being a kid. As an adult, if you're hungry, it's hard to focus on anything else. And so we know, and as Sarah pointed out, there are so many families that are just struggling with food security. That means kids are going hungry. And when kids are hungry, they can't focus on school. They can't focus on having fun. They can't focus on being a kid. And it should not happen. And as Sarah pointed out, the fact that there is no contribution to any of these school programs from the federal government is wrong. We've got people making charitable donations, and that's incredible that they're being so generous. But that is not a way to feed people in a sustainable manner. We need a stable funding from the federal government to ensure that every kid going to school in our country, no matter where they live, no matter what school they go to, is getting a nutritious meal. It's going to help out those families who are feeling the guilt of not being able to make sure their kids get the meals that they need. It's going to help those kids focus on school. And it's important to point out, like Claire mentioned, that we are the only G7 nation in the world that doesn't have a national food program in schools. So take that in. We're talking Germany, France, Italy, the United Kingdom, everywhere else. Even the United States has in place a national food program in schools, but Canada doesn't. Let's fix that wrong. The Liberals have been promising this for years now. They've not delivered on it. Let's force them to do it in this upcoming budget.
Okay, I think with that, we're going to go to questions on Zoom.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. So just a reminder to folks on Zoom to please use the raise hand function to ask a question and one follow-up. Juste un petit rappel à tout le monde qui est sur Zoom d'utiliser la fonction lever la main pour poser une question et une question de suivi. We will go ahead and start with Mackenzie from Global. Please go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Singh. You have many conversations with the Liberals consistently. Have they indicated to you that this will be in the upcoming budget?
Thanks so much for the question, Mackenzie. We saw the Liberals promise this in the last budget in 2019. They campaigned on it again in 2021, but we do not see any funding for it. So I'm very worried that the Liberals are just going to talk about this. So we want to make sure they deliver it. We want to see funding. We want to see dollars committed to. We don't want to just see a vague promise, but we want to see money in the upcoming budget. So to your question, the Liberals have promised this in previous budgets, but we don't have one in place. Sarah can tell you there's no funding yet at the federal level coming to schools here in Toronto. So we want to see this happen. We think this is a major priority, and we are going to continue to put pressure on this government to deliver that in a concrete way in this upcoming budget.
On another topic, we've seen Conservative MPs encourage constituents and they themselves go outside of constituency office for a number of your MPs, Charlie Angus being one of them. Do you think it's appropriate to see Conservative MPs encouraging protests outside constituency office?
Well, I mean, let's talk about what the Conservatives are doing. So in a time when we're in a minority government, in a time when people are struggling with the cost of groceries, the cost of rent, the cost of living, at a time when they're struggling, the Conservatives are telling their supporters to go and protest other members of Parliament. But they are not saying a single thing about Galen Weston and other corporate CEOs like him who are ripping off Canadians, making record profits while people can't afford their groceries. It shows you what Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are all about. They're not about going after the real problem. For them, it's all about power. They're saying go after MPs because they want power. They're not saying go after the corporate CEOs that are ripping you off. They're not talking about going after TELUS, Rogers, and Bell, who are ripping you off when it comes to your cell phone, or the corporate landlords that are scooping up housing, making it harder for people to afford to buy a home, or the corporate CEOs that are ripping you off when you go to grocery stores. Let's look at what the Conservatives are prioritizing. They're not going after the real problem. We're focused on making sure people have an affordable life. Let's go after the real problems. And we're using our power in a minority government to deliver results. We're getting people dental care. We're getting people pharma care. We're making the childcare legislation permanent so that people can actually afford childcare for their families. We're actually delivering concrete things for people when the Conservatives are not even focused on the real problem.
We will now go to Mary Brooke with Island Social Trends. Please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Singh.
Hi there.
Hi. So you've said today that you expect this to happen, as in the National Food Program being in the next budget. So do you have sort of an inside track on this being, is this within the confines of your supply and confidence agreement? Are you demanding this? Would this be a deal breaker? And has the program been costed?
Thanks for the question. Well, I want to be very, very clear. We're demanding this. And often, as we have in the past, we demand things because we want the government to act. We don't want just some words or a vague promise. We want to see a real commitment. So it's our demand today that the Liberal government bring in place funding for a national food program for kids in schools. That's our demand. Our expectation is that it's not just words. We want to see real commitments in the sense of dollars so that kids can get a nutritious meal in school. That's our demand. That's what we're asking for. The Liberals, again, have promised this since 2019. Specifically, they made a promise to bring it in the budget in 2019. They didn't do it. They promised again in 2021 in their election campaign to bring it in. Haven't done it. So now we're making it very clear we are demanding the government do this. It's not specifically part of one of the things that we've negotiated, but we are demanding that the government move forward with this. We've been asking for this for months now. We're going to continue to put pressure on them. I should also mention that Pierre Poilievre voted against this idea twice. He voted against kids getting a nutritious meal while people are struggling to buy food at a record time of food bank usage. He's even mentioned that. He knows that it's a record time of food bank usage. And despite knowing that, he voted against you and your family getting a nutritious meal at school for your kids. That's who Pierre Poilievre is.
And also, the federal government, you say, is not a partner to this program right now, but as federal and municipal and charitable organizations are. So what is your pitch point to the federal government? Why should they come on to something that's already being, maybe not perfectly, but delivered as much as possible through the provincial and school board level?
Well, we know that the programs that are in place in provinces across the country aren't covering everybody. Because they're limited funds, they're covering some schools or some age or some demographics, but it's not a program that's in place for every kid. And when we look at the needs are just not being met. Even in Toronto, when there are some programs, as Sarah pointed out, there are still massive gaps. There are still a significant number of kids that aren't getting a nutritious meal in school. And if we take that across the country, in BC, back in the province I represent now, there's a great initiative where the BC NDP brought in place some funding for school food program. But that program also doesn't cover everybody. It covers only a percentage of kids. We want to see whatever exists across the country expanded to cover every single kid going to school. Everyone should get a nutritious meal. And so let's stop with the piecemeal approach and have real federal partnership so that every kid can get a meal.
We will now go to Marina with CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Thanks
Hi there.
for taking our questions. So if the federal government were to put a food program, a national school food program into this upcoming budget, what specifically do you want to see or not see in a potential program?
Well, I want to see a program that is sufficient to cover all kids in all schools in all provinces across this country. I want to see real dollars, not just a vague promise that this is something that they will do or they will look into. I want to see a commitment with dollars so that this program can be funded and kids can actually get a nutritious meal. I want to see that done immediately, and I don't want to see something that is a promise in the distant future, but I want to see something that's starting to roll out immediately.
We see the federal government rolling out a dental care program, a pharmacare program. Those are very expensive. We're talking about billions and billions and billions of dollars. A national school program would also cost more money. So how do you make the case that this is something that the government can afford? I think we can get behind the idea that kids should be able to have full bellies and clean teeth, but how is this something that is something that can be paid for?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways for us to be responsible at the federal level, and I think the Liberals haven't shown that. First of all, they've been spending hundreds of millions of dollars on outsourcing services that could be done by the civil service instead. And this hundreds of millions of dollars on outsourced, on contracted out work is wrong. To consultants, that's wrong. And we've seen some of the examples of how wasteful that is. We also know that there's billions of dollars going towards fossil fuel subsidies that continue. That is a waste. We should not be spending billions of public money on highly profitable companies. The oil and gas sector is also making record profits when we talk about corporations that are exploiting people. That's another sector where they're making record profits and they're not contributing their fair share, and they should not be getting public money. There are a number of areas that we've called for, in addition to putting in place a wealth tax on excess profits, like other countries, including the United Kingdom, have done, where they see record profits being made in certain sectors. They put in place a wealth tax. I remind folks that's a conservative government in the UK that put in place a wealth tax. We think that there's ways to do that as well. There's ways to increase revenue in a responsible way. There's ways to ensure that we are not wasting money. And if we think about our priorities, what could be a more important priority if we stop wasting money in other areas than investing in our kids to make sure they have a meal? And I'll close with the fact that every other country in the world that's a G7 nation has figured out a way to ensure that kids can get a meal at school. We should be able to do that here in Canada. I reject the conservative approach. We talk about food security as an issue and then vote against the school lunch program or school food program. And I reject the Liberals' approach of just promising this and never delivering it. That's why New Democrats are demanding it today.
We will now go to Randy Toms with 93.1 The Border. Please go ahead.
Hi.
Hi there.
JAGMEET, can you explain a little bit more around the details of the program? You talked about providing money, but how would that money be used? Would it be used for schools to renovate, like maybe put kitchens in? Are we talking staff? Are we talking food? Are we talking a whole bundle here?
Well, the delivery is something that's going to require working with provinces as schools are a provincial jurisdiction. But we know there's a number of existing programs, and those programs, many of them just need additional funding and they could deliver more food to more kids. So I think about the current program that exists in some schools in Toronto. If we were able to fund it properly, we could expand that. I know in BC, similarly, there is a program in place. The funding there is enough to cover a percentage of the kids. I believe it's about 20% of kids, but that leaves 80% of kids not supported. So a lot of it is ensuring that there's adequate funding, and that funding can expand existing programs. They can then expand the delivery of the food that they are already providing. I would say a couple of stipulations. I would want to see that this program is focused on public delivery of a food program or a not-for-profit delivery of a food program. And the actual way it's done, we could figure that out. Well, let's have the federal government step up and commit to delivering the funding necessary so that every kid in our school, in our country, going to school gets a meal.
I had a question earlier about the carbon tax, and then you diverted directly back to this program. Is it kind of the feeling now that it's April 1st, this tax is in, we're, I guess, move on to something else?
Well, what I would say is the reason why this has become a topic of concern is because of the cost of living. And I hear people when they talk about the cost of living. I think it's very important for us to focus on that. But when we talk about the cost of living, and we're talking about grocery prices as one of the major things that people are concerned about, Pierre Poilievre would have you believe that it's something to do with the carbon tax that your food prices are up. When the evidence is in, it is corporate greed. The CEOs of, basically there's 3 CEOs that run the vast majority of grocery stores in our country, are making record profits. If they're making record profits, it's clear that it's not a matter of just increased costs. They are exploiting and gouging people. And we know this is not something that is unheard of. In Canada in 2018, the large corporate grocery stores and bread producers colluded to jack up the price of bread. So that happens in our country. So I'm just saying that the concern around an increased tax is that, well, it's going to make it even harder for people to afford their food. I'm pointing out what Canadians already know. The real cause of the cost of food going up is corporate greed. And you're never going to hear Pierre Poilievre talk about that because those are his buddies. His chief strategist for the Conservative Party is a major corporate lobbyist for the largest corporate grocery store. They're not going to go after the real problem. They want to distract you from what the real problem is. I'm focused on the real problem. On top of that, I also will say the Canadians know that there's a serious impact in cost of the climate crisis that we're living in. I've been to communities that have been evacuated because of extreme fires and then extreme flooding in the same year. So we know we've got to take on the climate crisis and do that in a responsible way, that we take on the big polluters. And so our plan is, let's make life more affordable, let's take on corporate greed, and let's be sure we're protecting our planet.
We have time for one last question, and it'll come from Stuart Benson with the Hill Times. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm noticing that there's an announcement scheduled with Prime Minister, Deputy of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Minister of Youth and Women and Girls. So there's been a couple of pre-budget announcements from the Liberals on a number of things. So I know you're saying you're demanding this and you're expecting it should be there, and you've said you don't have any sort of inside knowledge about whether or not they will be making this announcement. But CTV has reported there could be as many as 17 more announcements between now and the budget. Are you concerned that even if they do announce this, like they've done with pharmacare and contraceptives, that they're going to sort of leave your party out of the spotlight on this, and your party may not get the credit, as it were, that you may deserve?
Well, I appreciate the question. You know, we've shown again and again that we're in it for people, and so we're fighting to make sure life is better for people. Whether we get the credit or not doesn't change the fact that people are better off. That to us is the victory. If people are better off, then we have done our job. And so whether it's pharmacare, we fought for that. It's clear the Liberals would never have done it. They promised and broke that promise for decades. Only now, when we've got the leverage in a minority government, we negotiate and force them to move forward on it. So we're going to keep on fighting for people, whether we get the credit or not. That's not our goal or our priority. Our priority is getting people relief right now. While the Conservatives, their goal is just power. They're not interested in using the power they have right now to help people out. They've not done that. They're more interested in setting themselves up to win political battles. We're interested in getting people relief right now. That's our commitment. That's our focus. On this food program, we're demanding it. We've been demanding it for months. We're going to keep on demanding that it happen. And we want to make sure that it's not just an announcement, that it actually gets delivered. So we're going to focus on that. With the pharmacare, we've got the Liberals to commit. Now we want to see it rolled out. We want to see negotiations with provinces. We want to see people getting free diabetes medication and medical devices, as well as contraceptives. So we're going to keep on fighting. That's what we do as New Democrats. We fight for you. We fight to make life better for people. And that's our goal. That's our priority. That's everything we've done shows you again and again, we use our power for people.
And just if I could do a quick follow up on just the specifics. So assuming that this money is appears in the next budget, the 200 million in the first year, $1 billion over the next 5 years, how would you like to see that money distributed between the provinces and territories? I've heard people say that it should be a matching program, like dollar for dollar, compared to what provinces and territories are already spending, or do you think it should be based on per student? What are your thoughts on that?
In terms of delivery, I want to see the best program that delivers the most care to the most kids. That's really that's our principle. That's the way we look at programs. How do we get the most care to the people, the kids that need it? Let's get the care to the kids that need it. Let's make sure that they get, whether it's in any of the programs we fight for, we want to make sure that delivery matches the needs for kids, for people, for whoever we're trying to help out. And that's our priority. But let's be really clear. Our focus now is making sure the federal government steps up. We can work out delivery. We can work out what the best way to get that money out to communities, to families, to provinces, so it makes it to schools. We can work that out. But let's get a commitment. The upcoming budget. That's our focus right now. So we are going to keep the pressure going. We demand the government do this for food bank usage when child poverty is on the rise, when people are hurting when it comes to the cost of food, and parents are feeling that guilt that they don't know if they can afford to put together a nutritious meal. So they scrap together some snacks. We want to make sure that parents don't have to worry about this. We want to make sure kids get a good meal, and we are fighting to make sure that happens.
What a great day. What a great day for us to all be here together in Scarborough. I am so excited. I'm excited to be here with these great families, these great kids, these great educators. I'm excited about the announcement that we're here to make. I just want to start by mentioning a couple of the colleagues who are here. We are in the riding of our great friend, John McKay. We've just seen the Prime Minister's talent as a short order cook. You know he's cut up some cucumbers and strawberries for his kids. And I'm here with my colleagues, Ministers Marcy Yen, Jenna Suds, and Mark Holland, and a great representation from our Toronto caucus. I think we have Nate Erskine-Smith, Julie DeBrusen, Jean Yip, and Ryan Turnbull. So thank you everyone for being here. This is a big and great day. And really, I want to thank and recognize the educators, the people who care for our kids. We are so glad to be here with Ucha Sawyers, who's the CEO, and all the incredible people at the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club. We just had a chance to hang out with some of the kids here, and they were telling us about coming here every day before school, how important it is. I heard that the waffles served with chocolate sauce are a particular hit. And really, to have kids talk with such affection, such comfort, such confidence about a place they go before school, that says everything you need to know about the work being done here. You are such an important resource for children and families in Scarborough. And I can tell you, having spoken to some happy children who feel safe and loved here, that the work you do is truly essential. I also want to recognize the work of some of the advocates for children who are with us today, like Tyler Arsenault, Debbie Field, Judith Berry, Amberly Reitz, Heidi Yateman. We have some amazing teachers, the Canadian Teachers Federation, and our friend, Senator Hassan Youssef, for championing this cause. Someone said to me today that today's announcement is the culmination of 30 years of work and advocacy. So it's a day's announcement. Yeah. And truly to all the people who have been working so hard, building the case, making the arguments, caring for our children, thank you so, so much. Today, we're living in a pivotal moment, and we have a plan to help every generation of Canadians get ahead. And that's because today, many younger Canadians feel as though the deck is stacked against them. They can get a good job, they can work hard, but far too often, the reward remains out of reach. Thank you very, very much for being here on an Easter Monday. I am so happy and so excited that we're able to take this big step together. And now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Minister Jenna Suds. Jenna, over to you.
Amazing. Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the East Scarborough Boys and Girls Club for hosting us here today. For myself, as an MP, as a mom, as a volunteer and past board member with my local food bank, I hear from parents about the struggles that they feel today as they raise their children in this economy. Les épiceries coûtent cher et pour certaines, il n'est pas toujours possible d'envoyer leurs enfants à l'école avec un repas complet. At lunchtime, that kid who doesn't have food doesn't sit with his or her friends because he's embarrassed and he's hungry, and he certainly isn't concentrating on his classes. So I want to take a moment today to thank the incredible teachers, school volunteers across our country that often bring snacks to school with them, that they purchase themselves to share with their classes. Like Melinda. Melinda's a teacher in Ottawa who brings granola bars to have in her desk so that when there's a child in her class who's hungry, she can share a granola bar with them. And Lisa, an elementary teacher, in St. Catharines, who's always looking for ways to get more food into her classroom and loves to see the impact that it has, from redirecting their attention, learning, or to the social aspects of simply seeing them try new foods with their friends. She shared with me how heartbreaking it is to see kids hungry day after day at school. Nous nous sommes engagés à changer cela. The responsibility for ensuring that no child spends the whole day on an empty stomach shouldn't be on individual teachers. We are in Canada. We can do better, and we will do better. As Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, I'm committed to ensuring that no child goes hungry at school. Simply put, the first ever National School Food Program will help nourish Canada's future. This is a big day, and I want to make sure that we take the time to thank the and Tommy at Breakfast Clubs of Canada, Carolyn and Debbie at Coalition for Healthy Schools, as well as BC and founder of Lunch Lab, and so many others, those in the room and across this country. Dedication and their steadfast advocacy, which helped us get to today. Assurons-nous de leur donner plein potentiel. We believe in investing in people. Canadian Dental Care Plan. Fairness start in life. It means being there to give parents a hand up to doing. We will be there to have your back. I'd like to now introduce my friend and colleague, the Minister for Women, Gender Equality and Youth, Marcy Ian. Thank you very much.
Bon après-midi. Bonjour. Hello, everybody. I said to somebody, well, a lot of people, this is a good day, and I kept getting corrected, and it was like, no, it's great. It's great, Marcy. So we're going to go with that. I asked members of the care community, so many of you, one word that would describe this day. And here's what I heard. I heard transformational. I heard amazing. I heard great. I heard a couple of words together, thank goodness, finally, but we're here. Please excuse me as I get a little personal here. There are teachers in my life that I love a lot, and they live in different parts of this country. Calgary, Alberta, La Loche, Saskatchewan, and right here in Scarborough, Ontario, where I'm from. Here's the thing about Scarborough is always in the house, always. So here's the thing about all of them, all of these teachers. Their kids, and they call them that, their students are at the center of everything. They are the reason, capital REASON, they are it. So if someone comes to school hungry, they know it. They notice if someone's lunchbox isn't full, or maybe if someone skips a class trip because they don't have the lunch money required on said trip. Programs only go so far. So sometimes these teachers, these caregivers, these educators, they get creative. And they have things like community breakfasts or after-school study sessions that include a meal, a healthy meal. They sometimes, and it's actually a lot of times, as Jenna mentioned, use their own money because their kids matter and they know that being hungry means you can't possibly learn well. What we're announcing today is going to help. Help families that no matter how hard they work, they're struggling to put food on the table. Help kids that aren't eating enough. And that's almost 1 in 4 in this country we call home. Help teachers, parents, care communities. Help to give young people what they need and deserve, a fair chance, which includes a full stomach. When young people thrive, so too does a nation. It is young people that hold the key to a country's future. That's why this investment in this national food program is so important. It's important because it's a down payment. It's a down payment on the well-being of a most valued resource, our young people, our youth. So I want to say thank you, a big thank you to the care community in this room. There's so many of you, we've chatted, that have said, we've been working on this for decades. We can't believe we're here. But the fact of the matter is, we are, and we're not done. There's lots to do, but this is a heck of a start. It's a heck of a start. I now have the great honor to pass.
It's Easter Monday today. During the long weekend, a lot of people spent time with their family and shared good meals together. And around the kitchen table, a lot of people were talking about grocery prices that are still too high. Tomorrow, kids will be going back to school, and some of them won't have enough to eat. That impacts their health and their opportunities to learn and grow. And like we said last week, this year's upcoming budget will be all about fairness. Fairness for every generation. And that, of course, includes and starts with children and families. We all want kids to have the best start in life, including the most vulnerable. That's why we'll be investing $1 billion to create a national school food program that'll provide meals to 400,000 more kids every year beyond those served by existing programs. The teachers, advocates, and volunteers I spoke with today know that, and it's something I remember from my years as a teacher. When a kid walks up before class and says, "I'm hungry," that means we all have more work to do as a school community, as a country, as a world. We want everyone to be able to eat well so they can reach their full potential. Le Programme national d'alimentation scolaire vient s'ajouter à nos investissements générationnels pour aider les familles et rendre la vie plus abordable à travers le pays. Je pense aux services de garde et les soins dentaires. I think of the Canada Child Benefit that provides families with nearly up to $8,000 per child per year. With it, since 2015, we've lifted 650,000 children out of poverty, and Canada's child poverty rate has been cut in half. We're fighting every day to build an economy that helps every generation get ahead. People out there are still talking about the trickle-down economy, still thinking if you give tax breaks and opportunities to the wealthiest, That will somehow create more job and wealth that'll eventually make it down to everyone else. The problem with that theory is it's never worked. Ever. That's why for the past 8 years, we've been putting in place the building blocks of what is a strong economy, starting with the Canada Child Benefit that has cut child poverty rates in half, moving forward with investments in making sure that young people can afford to go to school, making investments in housing, in health, in mental health. More recently, $10 a day childcare that's saving, even in provinces like Ontario, that's only cut it in half, on their way to $10, saving thousands of dollars a month to families right across the country. We're moving forward on dental care for young kids and for seniors. Already over 1.6 million seniors have signed up for our dental care program. This is a choice our government continues to make to invest in the most vulnerable, because that's how you build a strong economy, by making sure everyone has the opportunity to reach their potential. And every step of the way, the Conservative Party has opposed our investments in communities and in Canadians. In fact, this past December, when Liberal MP Serge Cormier tabled a bill to develop a national framework for a school food program, Conservative politicians in Ottawa voted against it. See, our government knows that Canada's success depends on people of all ages being healthy, doing well, and being set up to succeed. That's what we're focused on. Fairness for every generation. Une chance équitable pour chaque génération. Thank you all for being here today for this really important announcement. Looking forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now begin the question period. One question, one follow-up. First question goes to CBC.
How are you?
Very well.
Nazima Walji, CBC. How will you make sure provinces will be on board with this program? And dental care, pharmacare, now a national school food program, it all costs money. How do you make the case that this is something the government can afford?
This has been a point of debate with the Conservative Party, the Conservative opposition, over the past 8 years. We believe that confident countries invest in themselves, invest in their communities, invest in their people. That's what we've been doing. Yes, with access to pharmacare through specifically prescription contraceptives and insulin. These are things that are going to make us better off as a country. Making sure that seniors and young people who can't afford to go to the dentist can actually get their teeth fixed. That makes us better off as a country. Investing in $10 a day childcare, that makes us better off as a country. These are things that we are stepping up with as a government, not just because it's the nice thing to do, but it allows us to be more successful as an economy. It allows people to have the opportunity to achieve their dreams. These are the investments we're making, investments that the Conservative Party has consistently voted against. And when it comes to a national food program, which we promised in our 2021 election, we've recognized that every province and territory has its ways of delivering food programs to kids, but we also know the need is far greater than anyone is able to meet right now. So we're putting $1 billion forward to be sent out to provinces and territories to add 400,000 more kids across the country who will have fuller bellies in class, who will be able to go to school and know that they can focus on reading and learning and playing and not on the grumblings in their bellies. These are choices we are making as a government because we know that making sure that young people here get the best start in life, that teachers can be there supporting their kids in the most ambitious way possible, is how you build a strong economy, is how you build fairness for every generation. That's why we're here to do this, even though, yes, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives wouldn't. We are effective in putting a price on pollution that is driving down emissions and leading the way not just in protecting the environment for the future, but on sparking the kinds of innovation and upgrades that companies and individuals are doing to their homes, to their businesses, so that we can be both better for the environment and more competitive. This is the kind of leadership that Canada is showing and has shown over the past 8 years as people around the world look to our success at transforming our economy to be less carbon emitting. We have a big plan on fighting climate change, but the price on pollution is a full third of that plan that makes a huge impact. But at the same time, we know that if we're putting a price on pollution, the cost cannot land on ordinary families across the country, which is why we're delivering a Canada carbon rebate that puts more money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadian families across the country in regions where the federal backstop applies to help with affordability. So we're both fighting climate change in one of the most efficient ways possible and putting more money back in people's pockets with checks that arrive 4 times a year. The next Canada Carbon Rebate check is arriving on April 15th. So it's money in people's pockets while we continue stepping up in the fight against climate change. That's what we're doing. Now, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are actually getting in the way of delivering the doubling of the rural top-up across the country. We committed to double the rural top-up for the Canada Carbon Rebate from 10 to 20%, but that's being blocked by the Conservatives, who are preventing money from getting in the pockets of Canadians right across the country who need that money, with the cost of groceries, with the cost of living going up right across the board. So anything that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are talking about, worried about affordability or worried about climate change, is simply false, because they're blocking climate action and they're blocking money in people's pockets. And from the very beginning, we said that this is a federal backstop. We need the entire country to reach a similar level of stringency, of ambition in fighting against climate change, both because we need everyone to do their part, but also because it has to be fair right across the country. Wouldn't be fair for one region to have to pay more than a different region, which is why we brought in a federal backstop. A number of provinces said, no, we're going to do our own system or keep up with our own system. British Columbia, Quebec, even the Northwest Territories have their own approach to pricing pollution, which is just fine. Every other province has the opportunity, if they want, to create a system that is equivalent to what BC, what Quebec, and what the federal backstop is. Every province has had many opportunities to do that, and we're always open to work with them on a way that will put a price on pollution, will support families, but mostly will reach the same level of ambition everywhere else across the country. So all those premiers that are busy complaining about the price on pollution, but not putting forward a concrete alternative that they think would be better for their communities, are just playing politics. Every province has the opportunity to put forward its own plan, as long as they are fighting climate change to the same level that we're asking all other Canadians to do. That's what a federal backstop is. But we're not seeing detailed plans from the premiers on this. They'd much rather try to complain about it and make political hay out of this. But Canadians know we need to fight climate change, and we need to be supporting people with more money in their pockets. That's what the federal backstop does. That's what the Canada Carbon Rebate that's landing in people's bank accounts as of April 15th is going to help them with. And that's a Canada Carbon Rebate, money in people's pockets, that Conservative politicians want to take away.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi there, Prime Minister. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Wyatt.
I'm going to switch gears for a moment here. The pro-Palestinian protests across the country have been prompting quite a bit of discussion, I think it's fair to say. You have some members of your caucus, like Anthony Housefather, who said he's both thinking about and reflecting on his future within the party. But then at the other end of that, you also have a very large many members, who are openly calling for a ceasefire. So I guess, how do you as Prime Minister kind of balance such a polarizing issue, not just within your caucus, but within the country?
Well, I think you struck it exactly right. These are really difficult times and really difficult moments right across the country where people have feelings of anger, feelings of grief, feelings of fear and concern, and very difficult conversations happening in communities across the country. I think it's sort of important that our political parties can actually be a reflection of the kinds of conversations going on in communities across the country. And it is a very good thing that we have both significant number of Jewish MPs and a significant number of Muslim MPs in our political party, because that allows us to have conversations that are the reflection of the kinds of conversations going on out there across the country. It is an incredibly difficult time. People are filled with senses of grief, of powerlessness, of anger, of frustration, and of course, people are allowed to, and we will always defend their rights to go out and express themselves and share their concerns and their anguish with their fellow citizens. It's an important right that all Canadians have. And we're going to continue to make sure we're having those conversations in a way that eventually brings people back together. Because in all this, sometimes we're forgetting a little bit that our neighbors are also our fellow Canadians. And someone on the other side of the perspective is also hurting and grieving, and being able to pull people together and try and find solutions, not just for Canada, but for the world, is what this party and indeed this country is all about.
And then just kind of following up on that, obviously there were protests in Toronto over the weekend where there were a number of arrests made. Despite policing obviously being a provincial jurisdiction, a lot of people still turning to you for your perspective. I guess what steps will your government take, perhaps working with the provinces, to both balance the obligations of law enforcement with Canadians' rights to peacefully assemble and free speech?
Well, first of all, it is a fundamental right that people are able to protest freely in this country. It is really, really important in our democracy and in democracies around the world that people have that ability to mobilize, go out and express their concerns for policies here at home or things happening overseas. That's something that this government will always defend. And that protest needs to be done peacefully in a way that doesn't endanger other people's lives. We expect police to both obey the laws and enforce the laws. And that's something that I think is necessary. Just waving a Palestinian flag is not in itself something that is unacceptable or anti-Semitic. People are allowed to express their concerns on every side of the event. It's when you start making people feel unsafe in their neighborhoods, in their schools, in their communities, that we fall into things where police do need to lean in and make sure that everyone is safe and feels safe. But that is a balance that is ongoing every single day by police forces across the country. And as a federal government, we expect people to obey the law. We expect the police to obey the law, but we also expect the police to enforce the law.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister. Barbara with Queen's Park Briefing. On today's announcement, could you just be more specific on how exactly will this program be rolled out?
Well,
thank you.
We recognize that provinces across the country have been investing in school food programs, including increasing their investments. Nova Scotia just came out with an ambitious plan. Manitoba is moving forward as well. Lots of provinces have different approaches, but we also know in every province across the country and territory across the country, there are still needs that are unmet. So we look at it as a federal responsibility to step up and try and make sure even more kids have opportunity to have safe, healthy food in their schools. And this is money that we're going to work with the provinces and territories and Indigenous communities on to make sure that they mean better, healthier food for kids to be able to access while they're studying. There's lots of conversations now to be had with the provinces, but as the Minister of Families and Social Development pointed out, these are measures that we hope are going to be able to kick in time for the upcoming school year that starts in September.
Hi, Prime Minister. Marham to the Canadian Press. Also on the same topic, some provinces have school meal programs, some don't. Some have larger programs than others. How are you going to make sure that there's a kind of balance in terms of, is it going to be like the funding for this program is going to be sent to provinces per capita on per capita basis, or how is it going to be measured?
We're going to continue to work with the provinces who are delivering school food programs to invest $1 billion more. That'll mean 400,000 kids who right now aren't getting the adequate support are going to be able to it. And there's more needs than just 400,000 more. That's why we're going to continue to work. But this $1 billion we're announcing today, that we're going to sit down with the provinces and look at how best to deliver them, is going to make a huge difference.
Just to follow up on the carbon pricing topic, why do you think you lost the support of some Liberal and NDP premiers and provincial opposition leaders when it comes to this measure?
You know what? All Canadians know that we have to fight climate change. All Canadians know that we are squeezed on affordability. This is a plan that both fights climate change and puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 families across the country. I think the question is, why are so many Conservative politicians and provincial premiers opposed to a plan that is extraordinarily powerful in fighting climate change and sparking innovation, and puts more money back in the pockets of Canadians? We hear premiers across the country worried about the cost of living for their citizens, and yet they want to scrap checks that leave more money in people's pockets. The question for me isn't, why am I fighting climate change and putting more money in people's pockets? It's, why do so many politicians out there stand against fighting climate change and putting more money in people's pockets? That's the question.
That's pretty much going to wrap up our video, gang. Hopefully you enjoy watching all three of your choices. Are you voting Bloc Québécois? Which province do you live in? I live in Nova Scotia. So, Bloc's not an option. Those are the choices. Go independent. Spend your vote there if you want to. We need a change very soon. You can see what's going down. This April 1st prank, they pulled it off. They weren't able to stop it. The Conservatives weren't able to. And we need a change. We need an election if it's going to change direction. If you're happy with the way it's going, don't say a word. Nothing will change. It's tough. My name's Aaron. This is Question Period Canada. We watch every broadcast of the daily question periods. Come check out one of those. Check out our other live stuff. We've always got fun things on the go here. It doesn't stop. Always. The Canadian politics does not stop. That's it. So like and subscribe. Get notified. Share it with somebody. Aaron, Question Period Canada. Catch the next video. Thank you so much for watching. These guys are long-winded, eh? They just keep going. We'll try to... And well, it's too late now. Thanks for watching. We're out.